All right, here we go. Everything looks good. We got a green light. It's red light. And we're at 37 seconds. So, good afternoon. I'm Magman on the First. Welcome to Chronicles of Earth 9. This is fan fiction, the writer workshop part of our stream. Later tonight, we'll be doing the grind from 6 to 10. There's a SpaceX launch tonight, so we might go a little later in the stream, but that's not scheduled till 11. I'm going to assume it's going to be postponed because they have a very tight window and the weather is supposed to turn bad in Florida over the next 3 days. And since that's further north of where I live and west of where I live, or east of where I live, I think they'll be experiencing upper atmospheric winds before we will. So they may not launch tonight, so I'm going to assume that that'll happen, but in case I'm wrong, we'll be watching it. Anyway, it's 5 minutes after 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. It's the 24th of June, 2019, and streaming live out of Tampa, Florida. We do that every day. That's on the East Coast of the United States, for those of you not familiar with the United States, or if you're watching this on a YouTube highlight video. That's where we stream out of. I have a lot to do. Yesterday we pretty much went over the timeline part. One of the things that we have to do before we can write any more stuff, which I do want to do some writing today, but we need to make a database, and not really sure if we should make a fancy database, but we're going to have to use Access, and I kind of wanted to go over that live on the stream for those of you not familiar with how to make a database. But as we're accumulating each story, and right now we're working on like 3 different books at one time, so we're accumulating a lot of data which are specific to each character. Each characters, the metahumans and the immortals, have superpowers, so we have to start having a unified system that we can catalog each character's sort of place in the story. And that way we update their biographies in real time as we're writing the books. And then and as we go forward in time, as I guess ancillary material or peripheral material, be able to have a catalog of each character in our lore and their specific histories and how they fit in the lore and how their powers work, which I do want to catalog. One of the things that we're doing in our lore, which is different than even in the actual lore of DC Universe, since we play a lot of DC Universe Online, I wanted to have the powers be similar to what they would be in the online game. I used to play DC Universe RPG game, which I'm very familiar with that system. And the system that we're using to scale out their powers is very similar to what was available in that game, although mine's a little different. I base mine on statistical methodologies would probably be the best word, in terms of standard deviations and so forth. And so so if you have a total population of 7 billion people on a planet, we base on a scale of 1, anatomically modern human being 1. And so if that person was to work out, or train their body, then they would be twice that of a normal human, right? So that would be a scale of 2. I guess I should bring it up so it would make more sense. But to bring that up. Go to our Dropbox account. That's where our master files are all at. We store everything in Dropbox in case our hard drive ever craps out on us. Our information is stored off-site. Sure, in the house, something's happened in the house or something. Our stuff is stored off-site, and we can readily get to it. And it's also free, so not to worry about it. Assuming that they stay in service. Assuming they don't, we might be in trouble. Need a backup. Story of Diane, here it is. So if we go to Excel, go to scales here. This is one of the things that why we need to make a database is for this scale. Here, wait for it to come up. So there's our master scale, and all the heroine stories that we have written over the years. Make it bigger so you can actually see the on screen because it's in 520 HD. It's what we stream at on Twitch, but on YouTube it would be at 480. So let's make the writing a little bit bigger, but this is the general scale. But in our, I actually made this in numbers on the iPad, which is all consolidated, but down here, when you move it over to Excel, because Excel is crappy, you have to break it all into separate sheets. Doesn't have the ability to do everything in one sheet like numbers can do, but this is to scale and see. So like anatomically modern humans right here, and this is a 10-point scale. See, 10 represents how old the person is. So anatomically modern human, based on standard deviation, which is a standard normal distribution curve in statistics, would be 1. And so like someone like Batman would be a 2, and then AGT means Aphrodite gene, or in this case a metahuman class 1 if it's DC related. The other lore that we write in, there's the heroines are all called Aphrodite gene, but we use the same scale for that, so it's all common. So when we do like our She-Ra story, and we're doing another story about these twins, Margot and Mario, and it's called Body Electric is the name of the show, and they get their powers through technology, through their suit. One of the characters is paralyzed from the neck down. She was in a severe she was in a severe accident, and so the heroine in the story builds this bodysuit, which is exoskeleton suit, which gives her superpowers. And her twin sister in the story, the way the story is written, it's told from the perspective of 2 different women. But one woman who's not injured she basically wakes up in the story with no real memory, and that's how her story starts, where the other sister thinks the other sister's dead. And then she's sort of like the sort of Bruce Wayne character in the story, and then their stories, they intersect at some point, and the story is called Body Electric is the name of the heroines. But anyway, the scale here shows an anatomically modern human, and we have the attributes that each character, including normal humans, have. So an anatomically modern human would be a 1, and if they exercise, it can become 2 standard deviations. The most a human could ever achieve, if they really train their body hard, would be 3 standard deviations from the norm, which would be less than 2%, less than 1% of the population in the world could do that. Humans in a population of 7 billion people However, the metahumans start at 3 times that of 3 deviations from anatomically modern human. And it goes by age. So at age 10, a metahuman starts off as a regular mortal. Then by age 10, their powers grow and they move to 2 times that of normal mortal, non-metahuman. And so by the time they're 20, their powers will grow to 3 times that of a anatomically modern human. And then when they reach age 40, their power grows to 6 times. And then when they reach age 60, their power grows to 9 times. And then at age 80, their power will grow to 12. And then the Titan scale is right here. So every 100 years that a Titan lives, and they have to die at some point and become a metahuman, where they move from their mortal life to immoral. After their first 100, they start at 15 times that of a normal anatomically modern human. And then for each 100 years that they live, the power grows by an exponent of 1. So if you have a immortal that's 200 years old, they would have 15 to the second. So like a vampire in the story, their base stat would be 15 times 2 to the second 3 for every 100 years they live. So someone like Dracula, who lives 700 years, he would be 15 times 7. John Jones in the story, who's 700 years old, he would be 15 times to the 7th power, and so forth. So when you get down to Wonder Woman or Athenata in the story, she's 2,800 years old, so she's 28 times that. See that? So she would be 96 standard deviations from anatomically modern human. But to calculate her abilities, would be 15 to the 28th power in all those attributes. Hippolyta, on the other hand, is 3,500. Her and Circe are 3,500-year-olds, and they're 117 standard deviations away from a normal human being. But she's a 15 to the 35th power is where Hippolyta is. But what makes Athenata unique in the story is that she has this infinite factor that she can draw on, her will, which she can modify, but she can only do it for short periods of time. But when she, in the newer lore where she merges into the symbiote form, this actually changes because you take the 15 to the 28th power and then put that in parentheses and go to the 2nd power because you have 2 beings forming together. One's 3,000 years old, the other is 2,800 years old, and their powers double exponentially. So they're off scale at that point, which is the Holy Spirit. But what that means, though, is, so like, you take their basic skills, like go over here to the Wonder Woman characters. Like Diana Prince, she's 2,800 years old. She's female. Her mass is human mass is 155 pounds. She's 69 inches tall, 34, 25, 34. She has brown hair, blue eyes. Her IQ in her normal human ability is 325 IQ, and her BMI is 23. Hippolyta, about the same. And those stats are based on the models. Like for the actors that we cast in Roe, we took their actual physical abilities and incorporated into the character. And so those are the real stats. and the actresses in the story. And then Ada Candice, 22. Those are Bo Derek stats right there. And Cyrus Gold, which was a Lee Majors. And then Kirky, which was Ingrid Pitt's stats. And then when you transform that into her power, so Diana Prince in her normal everyday self, her spiritual mass is 2,325 pounds. When you factor in her Amazon spiritual mass, that's 1.98 times 10 to the 36th power is what her mass is. So she's like Godzilla. In real life, she's like Godzilla size, her Titan size, but she scales down so she can walk around people. Not she killed them. Likewise, when Cyrus Gold became Solomon Grundy, his mass was 18,336. So after Nada, this is what her stats were when she was fighting Solomon Grundy. But when she was weakened down, she became these stats. See her Titan 1 level, his stats there. See that? And that's how he was able to defeat her. Or rape her, basically, in the story. It was then equal with her in terms of ability at that point. So when we choreographed the fight, we had to do it based on scales, and that's sort of how we reasoned it out in the battle. But getting back to my original point of having to make a database, this is why we have to do it. We have to take this information, put it in a character sheet, and then so we can have that data readily available all the time. But I think I might do that off stream, though. That might be too much for a writing show. Go ahead and close this out. Anyway, I'll make that smaller. Now, do you want to write today? But I'm not really sure where to write. We're working on 2 different books. My energies is more towards the Book of Diana. I want to really write the end of the book with Mason. But my mind's kind of on book 3. So I have to kind of refocus my energy. Let's bring up our reader. Go ahead and delete that. Well, I feel like yawning. Although the air's on, it's kind of warm where I'm at because all the lights are on, and that warm air makes me tired. Now, we did listen to the story yesterday, and kind of need to do that to kind of refresh my memory. Someone's talking. I'm going to shut the mic off because we don't want to have them talking in the middle of the show. what we need to write is we need to finish up Mason's journal, and we need to finish up need to write Victoria's stuff. Let me bring up this one. We haven't started on, so here are the stats. Make that smaller. Or outline. His outline needed to talk about the relationship with Red, which he did. He needs to tie up Demetrius' explanation. He needs to help Sebastian and Demetrius. Needs to explain Vanessa. It needs to develop a younger sister for Demetrius. That's the character we haven't developed yet. So, chapter 10 involves Dottie, Demetrius. Demetrius. So far, Athenatus' journal 1 was 2,011 words. Gus's journal was 1,973 words. Sheriff's journal is 2,472 words, and Athenatus' journal is 2,072 words, and Mason's journal is 2,005 words, which is a total count of 10,533 words, which each chapter is 12,000 words. We're 10,533. We're 1,467 words to the end here, which I think we can do. So, three characters involved are Dottie, Demetrius, Sebastian, and Vanessa, or these three people. Athenata, Gus, the sheriff, Mason, and Vanessa are essentially side characters. We need to add Victoria in there. Victoria is the mom. So, chapter 10, Dottie gets beaten up by Demetrius. At the party, Hippolyta Maybelline gets a bad feeling with Dottie. Athenata senses something's wrong and uses her telepathy. Athenata investigates the matter with her truth vision. Comes to Dottie. We did all this stuff already. This is the stuff we're working on. So go ahead and let's copy this, or select all. Copy. And come over here, we'll drop it into here. And we can listen to it real quickly. We use Microsoft Dave as the voice. Here we go.
4:05 p.m. May 25th, 2019. Mason's Journal. December 9th, 1955. Well, where can I start today? I do not really know. For the most part, my day had been happy and joyful. I should have taken this as a sign from God. The end of today had ended at a very sad place. I can probably state that as a father, it had been the saddest day that I had known up to this moment in my life. Based on what has been revealed to me today, there will be one sadder day in about 20 years or so. But that is all in God's hands now. I had been tending the bar on Friday as I often do. As a person who spent most of his days working down at the concrete plant for a better part of 30 years, serving drinks to people and listening to their stories is a welcome change for me. Anyway, I had been tending the bar when Red had walked into the place. She had always been a quiet person. She had been the person who had given me the money to buy this place and to pay for the construction of the building. It is safe for me to state that without Red, Mason's Tavern would not exist, and I would still be working down at the concrete plant. She had given Victoria the money to go to college and for when she is ready for law school. She had never asked me for anything in return. For me, I know Red to be good people. Red had approached the bar in her quiet and friendly demeanor. I could tell by the look in her eyes that she had been there for something serious. She had said to me, "Mason, I apologize in advance for the damage I am about to do to your place. I am going to place 20 bars of gold here on top of the bar ahead of time. That is $424,000 with 20 bars at 400 ounces at $53 an ounce in 1955. Then, she had turned and had walked over to where my son Demetrius had been sitting with his friend Sebastian. This behavior had concerned me. At the time, I did not know all the details that I do now, but my son, Demetrius had been acting weird for the last several days. Now, for the most part, Demetrius's behavior is joyful. He is a bright and intelligent man when he wants to be. I say this last statement because Demetrius had not been acting in a responsible manner, in my opinion, for some time. Ever since Dottie West had the idea to make him her business manager for her singing career, he had a good streak of fortune. I know that Dottie could have given that job to a more qualified person, but because she is the type of woman who leads with her heart, she extended my son an olive branch. In this day and age, 1955. In this day and age, 1955 America, a black man having a job as a music producer and business manager for a white woman in the country music field in Athens, Georgia had not only been unheard of, but it had been illegal to do. But kids are kids and they have dreams of changing the world. I appreciate the fact that Dottie had extended this offer to my son. Since they had grown up together on Dottie's cotton farm and had spent most of their childhood together, it would make sense to me that she gave him an opportunity that had been aligned with his dreams. However, Demetrius had taken advantage of Dottie West and Vanessa Montenegro. Now, I do not want to suggest that he had set out to take advantage of the two women. I feel that he took advantage of the moment because he had been a young immature man. He had these two women that he loved and could not be in an open relationship with one because of the law, but she had been the gravy train. And, not knowing where they would end up probably contributed to the mess that had become of their relationship.
Yeah, I'm not asleep, I'm just listening to it.
I am not saying that it had been right or had been wrong, I am just stating my observations as I had known them at the time. Young people can find themselves in strange situations. Heck, old people still get in those situations. I had just wanted to state for the record that Demetrius is not entirely at fault here. Sure, what he had done to Dottie West should have never happened. I had not raised my son to behave that way. It saddens me to no end to have witnessed such cruelty from the man I had raised. His mother Victoria had been wounded deeply by what she had witnessed. Victoria had to demonstrate a lot of restraint at the beatdown that had occurred by Red to her son. No parent wants to see any level of cruelty inflicted on their children. Red too had seemed conflicted. She had cared about the children. I write children, but all four of them are adults now. Red had seemed genuinely sad at the altercation. As the father of Demetrius, I had been deeply hurt by witnessing such an event. However, I do understand why it had to occur. A wrong had been done to Dottie West. And, my son had made the mistake of upsetting the quiet red-headed friend of Dottie West. As much as the struggle to end segregation in the United States is a cause I will champion until the end, the women in our country have an even greater road to travel. I had known when Red had placed those 20 bars of gold upon the bar tonight, she was going to do some bodily harm to someone. I had not known it would be Demetrius, but I did know that for Red, this had become personal. As I had stated before, I had known Red to be good people. For me, that is not just cute talk for the moment. I had witnessed her do some remarkable things in the community. I have seen her heal people that would otherwise be dead. I have seen her find people that had been long lost. What she did for little Ruby Tuesday had touched my heart so deeply. What many do not know about Red is that she walks everywhere. I do not know why she walks everywhere. I only know that she does it. With as much money as she has, she could easily buy herself a car, but she has not done so, and I respect that. I do know that she spends her nights working at Dottie's West Aunt's place, one of the local cat houses in town. And, I do know that she spends her morning working on Gus's farm, and afternoon working at Dottie's boutique. And, she is always around her daughter, Diana. In just the 5 short years that Red has lived in our small town of Athens, Georgia, she had become well known to many men and many women at her nighttime job. Now, I write this last part to give context to how much I love Red. It is not an attempt to discredit her or to stand in judgment of her. I get the sense that Red working down at Evelini's place had more to do with helping out the family and not for the money. And heck, Red is an attractive woman. Oh, I have looked. I do notice that she is not aging like other women at her age are doing. She has been in our small town for 5 years and women who were younger than her now look older to her. I have witnessed her pass through the local hospitals every morning on her walks and heal people up who have been cast aside as terminal illness. I know that she works with Father Michaels on the weekends as he does his Sunday morning rituals. She just stands quietly by as the people accept their wafer and heals them up. When she had healed my son up on the dance floor after she had beat him down, I had been astonished. I had never known someone in my life that would heal up or help the person that had done them wrong like that. She could have left him there to die, but she did not. Heck, she had tipped the band. Then, when she had revealed that Demetrius had gotten Dottie West pregnant, that had shocked me. For a long moment, I could not find the words to speak. I had held my wife in my arms to comfort her. Truthfully, I do not even know what my thoughts ought to be for this particular situation. On one hand, I have to love my son. We are a family. However, I cannot simply look the other way. With a grandson on the way, Dottie West is now family too. We are connected and we will always be connected. And Gus, that man has always been there for my family. He had allowed Victoria and Rick Sanders to use his farm to host the political rallies for segregation for free every year, even after the first one that ended in a riot. He had given Demetrius, Vanessa, and Sebastian a job with fair wages while they had been teenagers. His brother Paul had been the contractor that had built Mason's Tavern when no other contractor in town would take the job. It saddens me to no end when I see the pain in Gus's eyes. It downright angers me. With each flash of pain that wounds my heart, I just held my wife to anchor myself from doing something I would regret. My thoughts had gone to Vanessa. She had cared for Demetrius for a long time. Ever since they had been teenagers. For her, she had always had a childhood crush on Demetrius. And he had always known it. He had taken advantage of that love many times. Had he gone too far? I do not know. I only know that my son has what some people term as angel eyes. He likes to smooth the girls over with his soft demeanor and soft caring voice to woo them into liking him. I do not know where he inherited that from, more than likely his mother. It certainly did not come from me. Heck, I cannot even woo myself into doing stuff, let alone other people. My thoughts on Sebastian. I do not know where to start. Sebastian and Demetrius had always been friends. Sebastian and Vanessa are brother and sister. They had all grown up with Dottie West since they were in kindergarten. I am not surprised that Demetrius and Sebastian developed feelings for Dottie. She is a very attractive woman. And, she has genuine musical talent. When she sings at our place, the place packs in with customers and people all get very quiet for her. Dottie has a lot of love in her heart. It is infectious. For Sebastian, I had not known that he and Dottie had been seeing each other. From what little that I do know of the situation, my son had been going between Vanessa and Dottie. Vanessa had been the girl at home, and Dottie had been the girl on the road. Sebastian had been there to help Demetrius. To be fair, Sebastian has a good heart and a good mind. He is a wiser man than my son. In many ways, he has a better business sense than my son, but Demetrius does have a talent at combining things together. He does have musical talent, but he and Dottie lack personal experiences to incorporate that into their musical careers. Although, Dottie has been growing in that aspect, and my son has not. Unfinished section.
Alright, so I got to think about this for a minute. What I would do now, we're going to take a break and be right back. Right, we're back. I'm gonna listen to this in its other form. I know what I need to write, but I'm not sure how I want to write it. So we're gonna go to part of the book. Up some insight. I'll make it bigger so you can see it.
4:0 p.m. May 3, 2019. Athenatas Journal, December 9, 1955. Edit. December 9, 1956. As I had reflected on the events that had transpired 1 year ago today, I wanted to reflect upon the serious nature of the encounter and all the people involved that had occurred that day. I would like to say that things are better and that all involved lived happily ever after, but that is not how the world works. What I am about to record here into this chronicle is a collection of journal entries that had been made by myself during the event and later revised by myself after many hours of thoughtful reflection. For me, I had been at the party that Dottie, Roxy, and Joey had put together to welcome Hippolyta to the community. They had decided to have the party in the barn at the spot that Diana had been born at. Of course, Joey and Roxy had cleaned up the spot and did an impressive job of laying out a wood panel flooring to act as a dance floor for the other guest. There in the corner was a wooden manger with a makeshift mannequin with me holding a baby and a bunch of ducks, pigs, and chickens about the display. I would admit that it had been really cheesy looking, but it did achieve the necessary and sufficient emotional impact. I started tearing up at the sight of it. Sometimes, I think they do these things just to make me cry. As I had looked about the court area in front of the barn and between the house, there had been everyone. They all were smiling and laughing. The adults were talking, the children were playing, and the animals were walking about. I had been doing my best to be happy and cheerful. Life had been looking up in the past few days. My mother and I had been talking again. I had missed her. Gus had seemed to take a liking to Mother. In all our discussions about my mother and after having read some of my journals, Gus had not been expecting my mother to be so youthful looking. And Diana, she never left Hippolyta's side. Her response had been as if she had gotten a new gift and did not want to let it out of her sight. Mother too. She had been eating it up. Hippolyta loved children. As I had been standing there taking in all the sights, Maybelline and I had been talking. She had told me how she had been very happy to see that in just 5 short years that laughter had returned back to the old house. It had been a long time since she had seen that here. Thank you, Red, Maybelline said. For what, Maybelline? I asked. Gus is happy, for the first time in a long time. He does not have a worry in the world. He has peace of mind. I think he is smitten with your mama, she said slightly joking at the end there. I gave her a hug. Thank you, that is sweet. Mother has always been a bit of a wild woman, I had said. Wild woman? Your mom is a lion. Red, Gus is not ready for that. Not too bad for us prostitutes, she said jokingly. As I had looked around, I had been wondering what had been keeping Dottie away from the party. It had been unlike her to be absent from a party. I wonder where Dottie is? I had asked. As I had started to use my telepathy to scan for Dottie, Maybelline started to get a bad feeling about this. What is it, Maybelline? I asked. I don't know. I feel something bad has happened, she said. As I went to make a scan, the telephone had rung. I had walked over to answer it. Hello? I asked. Oh Red, I did a terrible thing. I need your help down at the apartment. Please come quickly. Dottie cried in a weak voice. At that moment, I had used my telepathy and my empathy to sense for Dottie. She had been in terrible pain, and she had been in terrible in agony. She had a problem breathing. She had been so weak and her life force had started to dim. As to not cause a panic with the party guest, I had used my telepathy to call to Roxy. Roxy, come on, we're going, I said. What, now? The party has just gotten started, Red, she said. We have to go. Dottie is in trouble, I said. And after that exchange, we formed up and went down to the apartment building.
One of the things that I like going on here as a writer is when you listen to all the succeeding parts, they sort of layer onto each other and they slowly reveal more detail. So like when Athenata is giving her she starts it off and you sort of get a glimpse of what's going on, but it's not really in massive detail other than she meets Dottie, here's what's going on, and then the father comes in and he sort of takes it to a different level, and then the sheriff comes in and adds more detail, and I kind of like that. And then so when we get down into Mason's part, he's giving a little more detail, but perspective from the other family and more from Demetrius' side. And I think from an artistic view, I didn't want to really have Dottie and Demetrius give their sort of take on it yet in the story. I wanted them to do that in the next book. But one of the scenes that's going to come up in this book is prior to chapter 12. Either this book or the next book. I haven't really decided yet, but scene where Dottie talks to God. That's kind of going off on a tangent. But one of the things I wanted to say is I really like the way that everything layers together, and I kind of want to keep that sort of momentum going. And I feel we need to hear from Victoria more than anything. And so the last part of Mason stuff has to transition to Victoria's, and I'm not really sure how I want to formulate that into words yet. So it's kind of why I'm listening to this over again. Even though we listened to it yesterday, I kind of really want to listen to it again so that I'm in the right mindset when I finish up Mason stuff, so I can write Victoria's stuff. That's sort of what we're trying to do.
A short time later, we had gone down to Dottie's apartment on the first floor of the building. We had walked over to the door and discovered that it had been unlocked. We had opened the door and let ourselves into the premises. What we had walked into can only be described as a terrible mess. As we had scanned around the room, the furniture had been turned over and broken. It had looked like a terrible altercation had taken place here. Dottie's clothes had been scattered about the living room, and they had looked as if they had been torn off. There had been blood everywhere. My heart sank in my chest. My anxieties started to run high. As we had made our way to the back bedroom where Dottie had normally stayed when she had been at home, that is when we came upon Dottie. She had been in a terrible mess. Not to make light of her circumstances, we will attempt to describe this in medical terminology to help present some dignity to this terrible matter. The patient had presented herself to us in a horrific manner. At first glance, the side of her head had been crushed in as if her head had been pushed into a hard surface of some type. The patient had been unclothed and left lying about the floor. Next to her had been the telephone that had been still off the hook and ringing to let us know that it had been enabled. As to not disturb the crime scene, we made every effort not to contaminate the area for the police to investigate later. We had approached the patient who had been lying on the ground on her anterior side. She had been unconscious. After checking her vital signs, we had discovered a pulse and it had been slow, and she had trouble getting oxygen up into her lungs. Then, we had decided to use our truth vision and our empathy to get a more detailed prognosis. Her body had sustained multiple fractures in her right leg and left arm. She had broken ribs, lacerations all over her body. Her body had bruises all over her face, her arms, her legs, and her vagina. We went to her immediately. We placed my arms onto her and we prayed for Athena to give me all the strength to heal Dottie. We had healed her arms, her legs, her face, and her vagina. We had healed her ribs, her lungs, and her arteries. It had been in this moment that we had gone into Dottie's mind and lived her life up to this moment. We had come to know of her relationship with Demetrius, Vanessa, and Sebastian. We had come to know of the complex relationship that Demetrius had constructed with Dottie and Vanessa. We had learned about the affair Dottie had with Sebastian. We had learned it all. It would be untruthful of me to state here that my feelings at this moment had been calm. From the moment we had entered the building to this moment now, my heart had been slowly building up with rage. My first instincts had been to go find Demetrius and kill him. However, Dottie's physical health had been the more important matter at hand. As we held Dottie's head in our arms, we had just sat there with our thighs up under her head. We had caressed her hair and her face. That beautiful face on this wonderful girl. We had wondered how such a beautiful person could end up in such a mess. Why did she choose to keep this from us? Why did she not ask for our help? Why did we not act on the truth as we had known them for months? Why did she not have the faith and the trust in us? This had no longer been just a simple polyamorous relationship between three people. This had become a perversion of one man's greed and unwillingness to make a hard decision decision. Laziness is such a constant factor in so many people's lives. It is a very difficult thing to see the results of laziness, how it can grow and get out of control and wreck people. As we had laid there in the dark room holding her head, Dottie had regained consciousness. "Oh Red," she had cried out. She had been in a state of shock just moments before this, and as reality slowly set into her mind she had begun to calm down. She had begun to cry. "Red, this is all my fault. I caused all of this," she cried out to me. We just listened to her and let her complete her stream of thought. "You read my mind by now, haven't you?" she asked. "Yes. We have read your life and have lived your life up to this moment. We know all about this event and what all led to this encounter," we said. She took our arms while lying on our thighs. "Red, I am ashamed of all this," she cried out. We had taken her up into our arms and had given her all the love we could give. "No Dottie, this is all Demetrius' fault. He led you and Vanessa on for so long. He took advantage of your naivety, your innocence. You made some bad decisions, yes, but none of your actions had led you to a place to have your face smashed in, your arms and legs broken, and your body being violated like that. Nothing excuses that behavior, ever. I am sorry that I didn't tell you before," she said. "What do we do now, Red?" she asked. "You are not going to like what we have to say, Dottie, but we are going to have to call the sheriff so that he can come down and make an official report on the matter. We are going to have to tell Gus everything," we said. "Oh no, Red. Daddy can never know. He would be crushed. He would kill Demetrius," she cried. We took her hands into our arms to calm her anxieties. "We have to do it before it leads to something worse," we said. "What could be worse than this?" she asked. We had taken Dottie into our arms and looked into her eyes and told her the news that we had discovered when we diagnosed her injuries earlier. We could not think of a more sympathetic method of delivery. "So here we went. Before your daddy finds out that you are pregnant with Demetrius's baby." Dottie's face had turned a lighter shade of pale at that moment. The stress from the trauma and the blunt delivery of the news had been too much for her and she fainted. We had placed our arms onto hers and gently moved her over to the bed where she could lay comfortably. While Dottie had laid there, we had taken the opportunity to call the sheriff. Then, we had sat down and begun the difficult process of writing an official report for the sheriff about the matter for when he had arrived. We had left the instructions on the countertop for the deputies that would be arriving shortly, and with that, we had gathered our things and had gone looking for Demetrius.
It's a lot of stuff going on there. There's a bit of a pause and then into the next section.
Asterisk asterisk asterisk.
4 p.m. May 24, 2019, Gus's Journal, December 16, 1955. The following is a report on a matter that is very difficult for me to present without experiencing anger. I feel that it should be recorded at this time so that when my grandson is born, at some point in the future, when he comes to me and asks me why did this ever happen, I can present to him my feelings and thoughts only days after the tragic event. First, let me just state for this record that, I do not know why a young man of Demetrius's age would commit such a terrible act onto another person that he claimed to love. Second, I should state that I am recording this event several days after the event. My blood still boils with rage from what Red had shown me on Friday, December 9, 1955. I cannot change the past. However, I wonder if maybe what had been done to Dottie had not been made so public, but I have to believe that Red's decision to display the truth had to be shown to all to prevent rumors from contaminating the incident. And, those rumors are going about town now. For me, all of this started on Friday, December 9, 1955. The kids, Joey and Roxy, had cleaned up the barn and driveway to host a party to welcome Hippolyta to the town. It had been a wonderful experience for me. I can state that I had been happy at the party. I know that Athenata had been talking with my wife Maybelline at the party. Sometimes, it can be creepy or weird, but I can actually hear Maybelline through Red as she talks. Although I can only hear Red speaking, I can get a sense of the conversation. What a wonderful thing that Red has to be able to talk to loved ones who have passed on. Red told me that Maybelline had been very happy that I had some joy in my life. That did touch my heart. During the party, Red had received a telephone call. I had heard her answer the phone. Her expression had become very serious. I had seen her quietly make her way through the crowd of people and motion for Roxy to go with her. The two had formed into their symbiote form and flew over to the apartment building. I had a bad feeling about this. Some time had passed, about 45 minutes, and Red had not come back to the party. My anxieties had begun to grow. Then, I saw all the patrol cars from the sheriff office at the southern end of the property. I went to my truck and drove down to see what had been going on. I had walked into the apartment where several deputies had been standing about. The living room in the apartment had been a real mess. The furniture had been tossed about the room as if a fight had occurred in the room. Then, I saw the blood. There had been so much blood. I am not a doctor, but I have been taking care of animals for many years and know that that amount of blood had not been good for whomever it came from. I made my way to the master bedroom where a long trail of blood had been on the ground as if someone had crawled their body across the floor. That is when I found Dottie. The sheriff had been there. He had been on one knee and kneeling by the bedside where Dottie had been resting. Dottie had looked well to me. She had looked traumatized, but I could not see any injuries on her body. That is when the sheriff had taken the time to explain to me what had occurred. He had taken the liberty of telling me about the matter so that Dottie did not have to repeat the terrible story a third time. This is when he handed me a detail report that had been written by Red. I had read the report in earnest. As my eyes had read each word silently, my rage had intensified with each word. Red's report had been very accurate and had been very detailed. I had read that she had healed up Dottie's injuries. If she had not been here, Dottie, my little girl, would have more than likely been dead from the altercation. This made my heart boil. I can surely say that I wanted to find Demetrius and kill him with my bare hands. As I had looked around the apartment, I did not see Red anywhere. I had guessed that she had gone to find Demetrius. That is when I decided to go find him myself. The sheriff had sensed my intent and my motivation and decided to help me go and look for Demetrius. I think it a wise thing that the sheriff made no attempt to stop me. I can safely say that I was not in the mood. The sheriff had driven the truck. We had made our way to Mason's Tavern to see if we could find Demetrius. It had been highly likely that Demetrius would go to the place since his father, Mason, had owned the place. It had been Red who had given Mason the money to open the tavern. He had worked at the concrete plant for many years and had always dreamed of running a bar. Since no bank would give Mason the loan to open a place that had a high risk of failure, Red had given Mason the money as a grant. It saddens me to think that our children could commit such cruelty to each other. But what Demetrius had done went beyond cruelty. It had been plain brutality, a behavior that I would surely deliver upon Demetrius once we had located him. A short time later, we had pulled the truck up to the tavern. There had been a large crowd of people standing in the bar where Red and Demetrius had been standing. I could hear Red talking quietly to Demetrius and the crowd of people. The sheriff and I had made our way to the bar where 20 bars of gold bullion had been placed on top of it. I had ordered a beer. Mason, who had a look of concern about what had been transpiring on the dance floor, had handed me a double draft and said, "This one is on the house, Gus." I do not know the entire details, but from the way Red is looking and the gold on the bar, my instincts are telling me that free beer is the way to go. All eyes and ears were on the dance floor. Red, in her normal soft-spoken and quiet demeanor, had explained to the crowd what was going on and why. More than that, she had used the magic lasso with the four goddesses, Hestia, Nemesis, Themis, and Nike, to reveal the truth to the entire crowd of people in the bar. That lasso had formed a barrier to prevent people from stopping what would eventually occur. I venture to guess that its intent was to prevent people from getting seriously wounded by Red. Then, it started. Red had begun to rain down onto Demetrius a fury of retribution the likes of which could only come from the hands of God. It had not been pretty. It had not been kind. As the father of the woman that had been assaulted by Demetrius, I had felt grateful that Red had found Demetrius first. I had felt every blow that had touched Demetrius's skin. I am not proud of my feelings, but I had them. I do not know if Demetrius had been deserving of such a punishment. I do not know if it should have been Red who had been the one to deliver that punishment. I only know that I had felt good. I had enjoyed the beer that I had drunk as I had witnessed the beatdown that had occurred on the dance floor. Although I am not proud of my behavior, I had felt great. After 30 minutes, Red had stopped the beatdown on Demetrius. She had pulled him onto her lap. She had been crying. It had looked to me that she had not been proud of her behavior. It had looked to me that it had saddened her to commit such cruelty to another human being. She had held his face in her hands, then she had healed up all his injuries. Having been on the receiving end of Red's healing ability and having witnessed her heal our farm's water supply some years ago, I can safely say that she had a real gift. Demetrius had been confused by her compassionate behavior and had asked her, "Why did you heal me? Why did you not let me die for the horrible things that I did?" Red had replied with, "Now Demetrius, you understand the truth of what you did to Dottie West. I am sorry that it had to come to this. You cannot die today. I want you to live a long and happy life. I want Victoria and Mason to be able to love their son as I do. I want you and Sebastian to be good friends. I want Vanessa to love you again. I want you to have a successful career as a music producer. Finally, to answer your question, Demetrius, I am sorry that in 20 years from now, you will have the honor of explaining to your son why you raped his mother and had become his father. Then, when you see all the hurt and pain in your son's eyes, then you will know that your pain and hurt had been self-inflicted. See, you're too young to know what it is like to be a parent, to know the joy of watching them grow and love. Mason knows, Gus knows, and now, you will know that what you did will be an injury that will never heal. I can only state now that when Red had revealed the information that Dottie had become pregnant with Demetrius's son, I had been in utter shock. However, I know the extent of Red's powers. I know that she had been the daughter of God. I know that she had lived all these years with the knowledge of knowing that day her daughter will die. I know that Red had not been a cruel woman. Demetrius and Mason had been in utter shock. The crowd of people standing around had been in utter shock. Red had just put her lasso away and went home quietly. I had drunk my beer and had set it on the bar top. The sheriff and I had made our way to Demetrius, who had still been seated on the floor. I had told to the young man, "The only reason why you are alive, Demetrius, is because Red got to you before me. Had it been me in that arena, you would be dead. But, whether you like it or not, my daughter is going to have your child. I hope and I pray that I live long enough for you to explain why you raped that wonderful person, Dottie, to your son." I had put my hat on and had gone to the truck to wait for the sheriff. When I had returned home that night, I had taken Dottie to the house and she and Hippolyta had talked all night. Red had not returned to the house until later that morning. When she had returned, she had relayed to me a tale about the rest of the night that had been unbelievable.
Okay, so that was Gus's part, and now we're going to hear the sheriff's take. Be fun.
For 2 p.m. May 6, 2019, personal report made by Sheriff James Brandon Corrigan, December 9, 1955. On the night of the December 9, 1955, shortly after 7 o'clock in the evening, my office had received a telephone call from an Athenata Trier Aries, 25, who many know from her nickname Red. She is a tenant of Dottie West. Dottie West, 25, is the landlord for the apartment building and commercial property that occupies the space at the address West Farm. Miss Trier Aries had informed my office that Dottie West had been a victim of a sexual assault and battery by a man named Demetrius Amos, 25. My office had dispatched several deputies to the premises and I had decided to look into the matter myself, as this incident had the potential to incite racial tension among the citizens of Clark County. To fully understand the underlying issues of this particular case, my office had been informed of matters of the highest level of security and secrecy that may have federal jurisdiction and state jurisdiction. The first matter deals indirectly to the matter and explains Miss Trier Aries' involvement with the case. The second matter deals directly with Dottie West. The third matter deals with Stephen Gustafson West. The last matter deals with Demetrius Amos. The first matter involves Miss Trier Aries, and I will use the name Red in reference to her for the remainder of the report. My office's history with Red goes back to 1950, when she had approached the office about a girl named Ruby Tuesday Robinson. 5. Miss Robinson had been a missing person case that my office had been investigating since 1940. Red had informed my office that the young girl had visited her while she had been laying by the pool. The little girl had told her that her name had been Ruby Tuesday. She had gotten lost and had needed help in finding her way back to her home. At first, I had been skeptical about the matter, but after listening to Red's information about the case, I had become intrigued. As to not end up in a tangent, I will state that Red helped my office close out that case. I have come to know of Red's remarkable ability for high details about facts. I suspect that Miss Aries is a meta-human and hides her identity to prevent harm from coming to herself and her family. This may seem unprofessional on my part, but I have come to respect any information that Red has been able to relate to my office on matters that require law enforcement investigation. Now, having written all the above information in this report, Red is the person who had written the detail report for my office prior to our arrival at Dottie West's address. The second matter deals directly with Dottie West. My deputies and I had arrived at Dottie West's apartment shortly after 7 o'clock in the evening. The sun had already set at the location. The crime scene had been a real mess. The furniture had been scattered about the apartment. Apparently, a desperate fight for survival had taken place in the room. Red had informed my office via her report that she had made every effort to prevent contamination to the crime scene, except for the injuries to Dottie West, which Red had healed up with her meta-human powers prior to my office's arrival there. Most of the crime scene had remained intact. There had been blood all over the apartment and a trail of blood had led back to the master bedroom. It is here that we found Dottie West resting. The next section represents matters I have deemed necessary and sufficient for this report and does not represent the entirety of Red's report that she had filed with my office. We had awakened Miss West from her sleep. Red had sedated her so she could heal her mind after the altercation. She had seemed startled at first but returned to her calm state once we had identified ourselves. Miss West had informed my office at that time that she had been assaulted by Demetrius Amos earlier that day. Red had come over to the place after she had been called by Dottie via her telephone. This had been shortly around a half hour after 6 o'clock. I had ordered a forensic team to sweep the apartment and that had allowed my detectives the time to investigate the matter for me. I will relay what Miss West had relayed to me. This will be a short synopsis of the much more detailed report that Red had provided earlier, and that will be supplemented by the medical examiner report. The altercation had been preceded by an argument about a sexual encounter between Dottie West and Sebastian Montenegro. Sebastian is a close friend of Demetrius Amos. Mr. Amos had been drinking prior to arriving at Miss West's apartment. Mr. Amos had asked Dottie if she had indeed had sexual intercourse with Mr. Montenegro. Miss West had confirmed Mr. Amos's information. Then, Mr. Amos had become enraged and attacked Miss West. The result of the attack had resulted in multiple severe injuries to Miss West to her head, arms, and legs. Mr. Amos had sexually assaulted Miss West. This had resulted in Miss West becoming impregnated with Mr. Amos's child. Neither of the people in the matter is married, so infidelity and adultery are not a factor in this case. My office concludes that based on the hard evidence gathered and based on the victim's statements, Miss West had been sexually assaulted by the suspect. She had been battered by the suspect multiple times, which resulted in severe medical trauma. It had been the swift action of Red that may have prevented the death of the victim, Dottie West. With the amount of blood that had been measured at the crime scene, it had been remarkable that death had been avoided. It had been during the questioning of Dottie West that her father, Stephen Gustafson West, had arrived on the scene. Mr. West, or Gus, owns the small cotton farm that the apartment building Dottie West manages is located. The mother, Mabel Lean West, is deceased. Mr. West had seen the lights from the patrol cars in the south end of the property and had become very concerned for his daughter, Dottie. I had let Mr. West read the detailed report that Red had written earlier for our office, and I had taken the liberty of relaying Dottie's recollection of the event. Miss West had been severely traumatized, and I felt that having her retell the event a third time might be difficult for her to tell her father with several deputies standing about. Mr. West had read the letter and had remained remarkably calm considering what he had been able to witness from his survey of the apartment and his own daughter's account of the assault. I could tell from his facial expression that he had become extremely concerned about his daughter's circumstance, and he had become very motivated to locate Mr. Amos. Miss West had informed her father and me that Mr. West could normally be found at his father's business, Mason's Tavern. The location is a few miles north of the farm's location. Since Red had not been located at the apartment, we had deduced that she had gone to look for the suspect, Demetrius Amos. Mr. West had decided to go look for Demetrius Amos, and I had decided to accompany him to keep him from doing bodily harm to the suspect or worst. Shortly after 8 o'clock in the evening, after the sun had set for the day, we had arrived at the tavern owned by Mason Amos. There had been a substantial crowd in the building, and it had appeared the crowd had been fixated by some disturbance happening in the location. As we had walked into the tavern, Red had been standing at the center of the dance floor with Demetrius Amos. Now, Red's demeanor is normally a quiet and a soft-spoken lady. I do not know her to be a violent person or a person that seeks to engage in violence. She had been telling the crowd of people how Mr. Amos had smacked her friend around. Earlier in the evening, Mr. Amos started to deny the allegation when Red had produced a device from her waist and tossed it up in the air. The device had looked like a golden piece of rope. It had spun around the two people and kept the crowd from entering the area of engagement. Then, the rope displayed imagery, sort of a movie or a very clear television program. On the projection, had been Mr. Amos assaulting Miss West in perfect detail. This had not been just an image. The rope had produced the sight, the sound, the smell, the feel, and the taste of the event. I had felt like I had been standing in Miss West's body is the best way that I can describe the sensation. The crowd's opinion of Mr. Amos had begun to turn as the experience on the presentation had become known to all. They were not happy people. Then, Miss West had proceeded to execute her own assault and battery on Mr. Amos. The altercation had been 30 minutes long by my watch. It had been a brutal melee between the two combatants. I use the term combatant loosely because Red had done all of the physical contacting onto Mr. Amos. Some in the crowd wanted to go to Mr. Amos to prevent the beating. It had been horrible to witness. Red had delivered onto Mr. Amos the same manners, methods, and means of violence that Mr. Amos had delivered onto Dottie West with such incredible precision and accuracy. As I recall the incident in my visual memory, the feats she had displayed in that tavern that night had been truly unbelievable. I must state for the record as a witness to the event that as the melee had gone on, Red's eyes had changed to a red color. They had started from a light red illumination and peaked at a high-intensity red. My next statement may lead some to question my insanity or judgment to recall facts, but Red had looked like she had been an instrument of God's hands that had laid upon Mr. Amos in that altar or arena of retribution. It is my hope that I never am the one at the receiving end of that deliverance. Then, after the melee had subsided, Red had pulled the suspect closer to her body. She placed his head onto her thighs, and with a gentle hand that she placed on his head, she healed all of his injuries. Her eyes had changed to a bright green color that had illuminated the entire room. A green mist or vapor had emanated from her being and it healed the suspect or victim. When completed, it had appeared that the suspect had not been in any kind of altercation. Mr. Amos had still been upset from the trauma, had asked Red, "Why did you heal me? Why did you not let me die for the horrible things that I did?" Red had replied, "Now Demetrius, you understand the truth of what you did to Dottie West. I am sorry that it had to come to this. You cannot die today. I want you to live a long and happy life. I want Victoria and Mason to be able to love their son as I do. I want you and Sebastian to be good friends. I want Vanessa to love you again. I want you to have a successful career as a music producer. Finally, to answer your question, Demetrius, I am sorry that in 20 years from now, you will have the honor of explaining to your son why you raped his mother and had become his father. Then, when you see all the hurt and pain in your son's eyes, then you will know that your pain and hurt had been self-inflicted. See, you're too young to know what it is like to be a parent, to know the joy of watching them grow and love. Mason knows, Gus knows, and now, you will know that what you did will be an injury that will never heal." Then Red had turned off the barrier and had tipped the band that had been playing through the entire altercation, and had walked home. To tie up some loose ends in this report, I had interviewed the suspect Demetrius Amos after the altercation. Mr. West had very little to say to the man. The two had learned at the same time that one would be a father and the other would be a grandfather. Mr. West told to Demetrius with his father, Mason at present, "The only reason why you are alive, Demetrius, is because Red got to you before me. Had it been me in that arena, you would be dead. But, whether you like it or not, my daughter is going to have your child. I hope and I pray that I live long enough for you to explain why you raped that wonderful person, Dottie, to your son." After that exchange of words, Mr. West had gone and waited for me in the car to return to his home. The last section of this report deals directly with Mr. Demetrius Amos. I had the fortune of interviewing Demetrius with his father, Mason Amos at Mason's Tavern after the fight had completed. I had informed him that under current law that I could arrest him on several counts and that based on evidence and testimony from many witnesses that he would go to prison for a very long time. I told him that his actions would have far-reaching consequences beyond the assault. I had taken the opportunity to remind the young man that racial tension had been growing in the county and it had been at an all-time high. People with political aspiration are going to use this event to propel their propaganda to whatever gains they can achieve. However, I had decided not to arrest Mr. Amos at the time. I had told the suspect that if Miss West had decided to file charges and if the county district attorney decided to make an example out of the suspect, there had been very little the sheriff could do about it. I had felt that the matter had been settled by Red in terms of retribution. His day in court would come soon enough. However, once the word of this matter had gotten out to the general public, he, the suspect, probably had wished I arrested him.
So since the sheriff's little take on this matter, and now we swing back to Roxy's take, the symbiote. And remember, Roxy and Athenata are together, so I thought it would be cool if you could see the story from the other symbiote.
4 p.m. May 5th, 2019, Athenata's Journal, December 9th, 1955. Note, we had decided to make this journal entry through our symbiote eyes. Roxy will be the person to record this entry to prevent bias from affecting the accuracy of the tale. It is a terrible tale. We are ashamed of ourselves for acting in such a manner. However, instinct had informed us that this needed to be done. After Red had left Dottie alone in her apartment or the place of that horrific carnage that had been delivered upon our friend and loved one, we had made our way upstairs to our apartment and changed into a pair of jeans, a tank top, and a jean jacket. Red put on a pair of boots and she had put on her hat. She had grabbed her purse and wallet. Last, she grabbed her lasso and tied it onto her belt. Then, she had walked off to find Demetrius. On the long road that went into town, Red had decided to walk there. She had been enraged mentally. Outwardly to the world, she had appeared calm and at peace, but deep inside, she had been on fire. "Oh Red, what are you going to do?" asked Hestia. "We are going to demonstrate to Demetrius the error of his ways. We are going to deliver onto him what he had delivered onto Dottie," Red said. "Perhaps, violence is not the right answer for this, Red," said Themis. "We do not know if it will be, Themis. We are letting our heart guide us through this night," Red said. "I am with you, Red. Retribution must be served this night." Nemesis said. "Red, I am concerned with what you said to Dottie back there. You had asked why she had made some of the decisions that she had made. I am concerned that you have taken the blame for the matter." Hestia said. "You know that it is true, Hestia. We let this go on for far too long. We had let this go on and should have stopped it before it had escalated," Red said. Sometime later, after the sun had set around 8 o'clock in the evening, we had made our way to Mason's Tavern. As we had walked up to the door, the security guard had made an observation of us. We could read in his head that he knew we were there to hit some guy. What made the whole matter funny had been that he had opened the door and did not try to stop us. "I know that look in your eyes, Red. I don't know who it is or what he did, but you got those red glowing eyes and they say, he's a dead man. So, I am going to open this door and let you go on in," he said. "Thank you," we said. Red had just walked into the tavern and made a quick survey of the crowd that had settled into the place on this Friday night. It had been a big crowd. There had been a band on stage playing a mixture of jazz and blues. We had made visual confirmation of Demetrius and Sebastian. The two had been sitting at a table located near the dance floor. Red's eyes shifted back to blue. We walked over to the bar where Mason had been pouring drinks for people. He had been the main bartender for the night. "Red, what brings you by tonight?" Mason asked politely. Red smiled and in a soft voice said, "Mason, I apologize in advance for the damage I am about to do to your place. I am going to place 20 bars of gold here on top of the bar ahead of time." Red pulled out 20 bars of 400-ounce gold bullion and set them on top of the bar. Then she walked over to Demetrius. Demetrius had been surprised to see us walking towards him and Sebastian. "Oh no, Demetrius. Do not get up on our account." "Good evening, Sebastian." We smiled at the two men. "Sebastian, you may want to go take a seat at the bar. Demetrius and I are about to exchange some words, we said. Sebastian had looked confused by what we had just said to him. Mason had looked confused towards us as well. Then, Red made an announcement to the entire room of people. You nice folks are having a wonderful time tonight, but I am going to have to ask you to step back a few yards to give Demetrius and us some room to have a frank discussion about manners. Red took out her lasso and tossed it in the air. The magical artifact had expanded out and started to oscillate in a circular motion. The device had formed a barrier between us and the crowd of people. The lasso had formed into a transparent force field. Demetrius stood up and started to say a few words. No, Demetrius, you have said enough this night. You, nice folks, see, Demetrius has gone and smacked up my friend Dottie West tonight. He smacked her up really good tonight, didn't you? We said. What are you talking about, Red? He said. Enough of your lies, Demetrius. Hestia, show the nice folks what Demetrius Amos had done to poor Dottie West tonight, Red said in a quiet and polite voice. As the lasso had been oscillating about the room in a circular pattern, the barrier between the crowd and the two people inside projected the real-time image of what had happened to Dottie. The lasso had not been shy nor bashful about the violence that had been inflicted upon Dottie West. The crowd of people had seen little Dottie West be smacked around by Demetrius. They had seen how he punched her face many times. They had seen how he threw her defenseless body on the coffee table and broke it. They had seen how he had pushed her head into the wall of the apartment and injured her face down to the bone. They had seen how he ripped her clothes from her body and had raped her many times. The drunken rage that Demetrius had displayed in the imagery had been felt by all who had looked upon the image. Many in the crowd had been silent. Many in the crowd had been crying. Many had been horrified by the display. They had seen how he took her from behind and pulled her left arm back and stepped on her right thigh and broke it. They had seen how he broke her left arm while trying to pull it back. They had seen how he pushed her onto her dinner table and raped her again, and again, and again. Mason Amos had been hurt the deepest by what he had witnessed. He had not known the words to explain such cruelty that his son, who he loved deeply, could commit such a terrible act. Vanessa had seen it all too. From the words exchanged by Dottie and Demetrius in that horrific scene, she had been made witness to the truth. She had been hurt the most from the display, for she loved Demetrius, or she had thought she loved that man. Unknown to us at the time, Gus and the sheriff had been made witness to the events that had transpired in Dottie West's apartment. The two men had come into the bar and had taken a seat at the bar. They did not want to stop Red on her delivery of retribution. Who could blame them? So now, you nice folks, I am going to demonstrate onto Demetrius why this behavior is never acceptable. This is going to be hard for some of you to witness, but anyone who gets in my way will be met with bodily harm, Red quietly said. And after that, Red had begun the terrible delivery of retribution onto Demetrius. The altercation had been one-sided. It had been a 30-minute altercation, basically with Red smacking Demetrius around. Initially, he had tried to put his arms up to defend himself, but they just ended up being broken. For 30 minutes, Red had used her fist, her feet, and her body to hit Demetrius in the head and the body. It would be misleading to state that Red had been upset or angry. Quite the contrary, she had been calm and relaxed the entire time. She just kept on hitting and hitting him the entire time. If you could set a metronome to the fight, then every second that had gone by would be the sound made as her hands and feet made contact with his skin. Red had used the necessary and sufficient force to beat Demetrius to a pulp. He had been a bloody mess. She broke his face, his arms, and his legs. She broke his back on top of the table. His head hit the ground and ceiling repeatedly. Over and over again, the violence had continued. As the fight had continued, Red increased the amount of force incrementally. The crowd in witness had been horrified. Some people made attempts to stop it, but the lasso would not let them cross the barrier. Unknown to the crowd and unseen by the crowd, Red had transported Demetrius to a pocket dimension. There she had transformed herself into a giant version of Demetrius Amos, and in that form, she had raped him as he had done to Dottie. She had transformed him into Dottie West. She had made him experience the humiliation and hopelessness that Dottie had experienced when he had raped her. Only, she had raped him again and again. After the 30-minute melee had subsided, young Demetrius Amos had found himself lying on the floor, a beaten mess. He had many injuries. Red had walked alongside him with tears in her eyes. She had still been in her normal quiet demeanor that all had come to know. Red pulled Demetrius to her side and rested his head onto her thigh. She had placed her hands onto his body. Her eyes had changed to an emerald green color. It lit up the whole room. In a graceful and beautiful manner, she had healed up all of his injuries. The crowd had been stunned at this event. Demetrius had been laying on her thigh still in shock from all the trauma he had suffered, but he had looked as if the fight had never taken place. There had still been blood on the ground and the furniture had been broken, but all of his injuries had been healed. Red held his head into her arms and pulled him in tight as a mother does for her son. Demetrius looked confused. "Why did you heal me? Why did you not let me die for the horrible things that I did?" he asked while crying. "Now Demetrius, you understand the truth of what you did to Dottie West. I am sorry that it had to come to this. You cannot die today. I want you to live a long and happy life. I want Victoria and Mason to be able to love their son as I do. I want you and Sebastian to be good friends. I want Vanessa to love you again. I want you to have a successful career as a music producer. Finally, to answer your question, Demetrius, I am sorry that in 20 years from now, you will have the honor of explaining to your son why you raped his mother and had become his father. Then, when you see all the hurt and pain in your son's eyes, then you will know that your pain and hurt had been self-inflicted. See, you're too young to know what it is like to be a parent, to know the joy of watching them grow and love. Mason knows, Gus knows, and now, you will know that what you did will be an injury that will never heal." And with that, Red had released the force field and had tipped the band 1 billion bar of gold. Amazingly, through all that trauma, the band had never stopped playing. They had just kept on providing music for all. No one tried to stop her and no one would. She had just said her piece and quietly walked home.
5 p.m. May 25, 2019. Mason's Journal, December 9, 1955. Well, where can I start today? I do not really know. For the most part, my day had been happy and joyful. I should have taken this as a sign from God. The end of today had ended at a very sad place. I can probably state that as a father, it had been the saddest day that I had known up to this moment in my life. Based on what has been revealed to me today, there will be one sadder day in about 20 years or so. But that is all in God's hands now. I had been tending the bar on Friday as I often do. As a person who spent most of his days working down at the concrete plant for a better part of 30 years, serving drinks to people and listening to their stories is a welcome change for me. Anyway, I had been tending the bar when Red had walked into the place. She had always been a quiet person. She had been the person who had given me the money to buy this place and to pay for the construction of the building. It is safe for me to state that without Red, Mason's Tavern would not exist, and I would still be working down at the concrete plant. She had given Victoria the money to go to college and for when she is ready for law school. She had never asked me for anything in return. For me, I know Red to be good people. Red had approached the bar in her quiet and friendly demeanor. I could tell by the look in her eyes that she had been there for something serious. She had said to me, "Mason, I apologize in advance for the damage I am about to do to your place. I am going to place 20 bars of gold here on top of the bar ahead of time. That is $424,000 with 20 bars at 400 ounces at $53 an ounce in 1955. Then, she had turned and had walked over to where my son Demetrius had been sitting with his friend Sebastian. This behavior had concerned me. At the time, I did not know all the details that I do now, but my son, Demetrius, had been acting weird for the last several days. Now, for the most part, Demetrius's behavior is joyful. He is a bright and intelligent man when he wants to be. I say this last statement because Demetrius had not been acting in a responsible manner, in my opinion, for some time. Ever since Dottie West had the idea to make him her business manager for her singing career, he had a good streak of fortune. I know that Dottie could have given that job to a more qualified person, but because she is the type of woman who leads with her heart, she extended my son an olive branch. In this day and age, 1955 America, a black man having a job as a music producer and business manager for a white woman in the country music field in Athens, Georgia had not only been unheard of, but it had been illegal to do. But kids are kids and they have dreams of changing the world. I appreciate the fact that Dottie had extended this offer to my son. Since they had grown up together on Dottie's cotton farm and had spent most of their childhood together, it would make sense to me that she gave him an opportunity that had been aligned with his dreams. However, Demetrius had taken advantage of Dottie West and Vanessa Montenegro. Now, I do not want to suggest that he had set out to take advantage of the two women. I feel that he took advantage of the moment because he had been a young immature man. He had these two women that he loved and could not be in an open relationship with one because of the law, but she had been the gravy train, and, not knowing where they would end up, probably contributed to the mess that had become of their relationship. I am not saying that it had been right or had been wrong, I am just stating my observations as I had known them at the time. Young people can find themselves in strange situations. Heck, old people still get in those situations. I had just wanted to state for the record that Demetrius is not entirely at fault here. Sure, what he had done to Dottie West should have never happened. I had not raised my son to behave that way. It saddens me to no end to have witnessed such cruelty from the man I had raised. His mother Victoria had been wounded deeply by what she had witnessed. Victoria had to demonstrate a lot of restraint at the beatdown that had occurred by Red to her son. No parent wants to see any level of cruelty inflicted on their children. Red too had seemed conflicted. She had cared about the children. I write children, but all four of them are adults now. Red had seemed genuinely sad at the altercation. As the father of Demetrius, I had been deeply hurt by witnessing such an event. However, I do understand why it had to occur. A wrong had been done to Dottie West, and my son had made the mistake of upsetting the quiet red-headed friend of Dottie West. As much as the struggle to end segregation in the United States is a cause I will champion until the end, the women in our country have an even greater road to travel. I had known when Red had placed those 20 bars of gold upon the bar tonight, she was going to do some bodily harm to someone. I had not known it would be Demetrius, but I did know that for Red, this had become personal. As I had stated before, I had known Red to be good people. For me, that is not just cute talk for the moment. I had witnessed her do some remarkable things in the community. I have seen her heal people that would otherwise be dead. I have seen her find people that had been long lost. What she did for little Ruby Tuesday had touched my heart so deeply. What many do not know about Red is that she walks everywhere. I do not know why she walks everywhere. I only know that she does it. With as much money as she has, she could easily buy herself a car, but she has not done so, and I respect that. I do know that she spends her nights working at Dottie's West Aunt's place, one of the local cat houses in town, and I do know that she spends her morning working on Gus's farm, and afternoon working at Dottie's boutique, and she is always around her daughter, Diana. In just the 5 short years that Red has lived in our small town of Athens, Georgia, she had become well known to many men and many women at her nighttime job. Now, I write this last part to give context to how much I love Red. It is not an attempt to discredit her or to stand in judgment of her. I get the sense that Red working down at Eveline's place had more to do with helping out the family and not for the money. And heck, Red is an attractive woman. Oh, I have looked. I do notice that she is not aging like other women at her age are doing. She has been in our small town for 5 years and women who were younger than her now look older to her. I have witnessed her pass through the local hospitals every morning on her walks and heal people up who have been cast aside as terminal illness. I know that she works with Father Michaels on the weekends as he does his Sunday morning rituals. She just stands quietly by as the people accept their wafer and heals them up. When she had healed my son up on the dance floor after she had beat him down, I had been astonished. I had never known someone in my life that would heal up or help the person that had done them wrong like that. She could have left him there to die, but she did not. Heck, she had tipped the band. Then, when she had revealed that Demetrius had gotten Dottie West pregnant, that had shocked me. For a long moment, I could not find the words to speak. I had held my wife in my arms to comfort her. Truthfully, I do not even know what my thoughts ought to be for this particular situation. On one hand, I have to love my son. We are a family. However, I cannot simply look the other way. With a grandson on the way, Dottie West is now family too. We are connected and we will always be connected. And Gus, that man has always been there for my family. He had allowed Victoria and Rick Sanders to use his farm to host the political rallies for segregation for free every year, even after the first one that ended in a riot. He had given Demetrius, Vanessa, and Sebastian a job with fair wages while they had been teenagers. His brother Paul had been the contractor that had built Mason's Tavern when no other contractor in town would take the job. It saddens me to no end when I see the pain in Gus's eyes. It downright angers me. With each flash of pain that wounds my heart, I just held my wife to anchor myself from doing something I would regret. My thoughts had gone to Vanessa. She had cared for Demetrius for a long time. Ever since they had been teenagers. For her, She had always had a childhood crush on Demetrius, and he had always known it. He had taken advantage of that love many times. Had he gone too far? I do not know. I only know that my son has what some people term as angel eyes. He likes to smooth the girls over with his soft demeanor and soft caring voice to woo them into liking him. I do not know where he inherited that from, more than likely his mother. It certainly did not come from me. Heck, I cannot even woo myself into doing stuff, let alone other people. My thoughts on Sebastian. I do not know where to start. Sebastian and Demetrius had always been friends. Sebastian and Vanessa are brother and sister. They had all grown up with Dottie West since they were in kindergarten. I am not surprised that Demetrius and Sebastian developed feelings for Dottie. She is a very attractive woman, and she has genuine musical talent. When she sings at our place, the place packs in with customers and people all get very quiet for her. Dottie has a lot of love in her heart. It is infectious. For Sebastian, I had not known that he and Dottie had been seeing each other. From what little that I do know of the situation, my son had been going between Vanessa and Dottie. Vanessa had been the girl at home, and Dottie had been the girl on the road. Sebastian had been there to help Demetrius. To be fair, Sebastian has a good heart and a good mind. He is a wiser man than my son. In many ways, he has a better business sense than my son, but Demetrius does have a talent at combining things together. He does have musical talent, but he and Dottie lack personal experiences to incorporate that into their musical careers. Although, Dottie has been growing in that aspect, and my son has not. Unfinished section.
Okay, here we go. It's a good review. The parts we need to add, we need to explain Vanessa a little more, and Mason has to set up Victoria's sort of story, and then we need to go into Victoria's part herself. And what we're using Mason and Victoria really are for is to set up the plot for the next book. And the next book is going to be the story of Joe West, and this book is the book of Diana, which is Athenada's daughter, Diana. And this is how Joe West comes to be born. He's going to be born in basically September of 1956. And this is how he comes about. And it's very violent. How his parents sort of, I don't know, come together would be the correct term, but the circumstance by which he was born, it's kind of tragic, but how he comes to be known, they name him Joe West, is based on his great-grandfather, Joe John, who was a former slave, one of the last slaves to die out. He dies in his 90s. He dies right after Joe is born, and that's why they named him Joe West in the story. But the idea here is, because this is in 1955, Athens, Georgia, which is the heart of where sort of the segregation movement begins in the South. It actually begins the night that Hippolyta comes, which is December 1st, 1955. That's the day Rosa Parks sits on the bus in Montgomery, Alabama, and the day that Martin Luther King, who lives in Atlanta, Georgia, which is about 10-12 miles from Athens to the west, he sort of gets in his head that he's gonna help this movement, but he wants it to be a peaceful movement. Now, I've decided we're gonna, in the next book, we're gonna include his story in our story, but we're gonna write a fictional version of Martin Luther King. And I don't really know that much about him other than the historical context, but I've been doing a lot of research on him, and I think we can craft a really good story around him and around his family. And the family is going to be the device that we sort of have a microcosm of the segregation sort of movement. And how it's going to work is you have this family where the daughter, her friend, are sort of in this relationship. They couldn't be together because of the law, but they had a sexual relationship, which was at that time a crime. And she ends up having an affair with his best friend. And when confronted about that, she told him, and he didn't like it. So he, in his drunken stupor, he assaults her sexually, which he really regrets afterwards. But the deed is done, and she ended up pregnant. And she ultimately decides to keep the child, though. After she talks with God in the story, she decides to keep the child. And it's really because Red, or Athenata, she ultimately decided to do it. And so Vanessa is the character, not Vanessa, Victoria, the mother of Demetrius. She starts out the story. She's one of the people who's really, let's get this segregation thing going. And her ambition is to become a lawyer, and she's going to college now, thanks to Athenata giving her the money to do it. She didn't have the money originally to do it, but she's through that character, she knows to get to where they need to go, it has to be peaceful. But this event sort of brings it home for her in the terms of, prior to this event, it had been an external sort of thing for her. Like in psychology, they call that distal stimuli, stimulus, and or away from the body. But when her son commits this crime, and then they ultimately have a child, she's kind of torn as a person, because on one hand she likes the law, she wants the law changed, but her son's in the middle of this interracial relation. So her ideals of an integrated society sort of take on a personal dimension for her, familiar or family sort of dimension. And at each step of the way of the story, as a writer, we're trying to not only have an individual sort of point of view, but we gotta always have a family sort of point of view. One that's a true nuclear family, and another that's, if you look at Athenata's family with her, Roxy, and Joey, none of them are married, they're not related, but they're all sort of thrown together by happenstance. And to some extent, Gus and Dottie are part of that same family. So we want to show at each step of the way these relationships are important, which is individual, group, and then society, or what they call individual, group, and many. And so when we're dealing with the whole issue of segregation in our serial, we're starting at the very beginning of that. And so, but we're going to go through the entire, starting from 1950 all the way through to the 1967 riots, which were part of the Democrat National there was a riot in Chicago, and also there was another riot in Baltimore. And what happened in Baltimore was the city was destroyed, and it never recovered from that incident. and shortly after that, Martin Luther King is assassinated. Along with that, you have the stuff with Malcolm X. He, I don't want to say he was at odds with Martin Luther King. He grew up, I guess, in the Illinois, Chicago area, so he had a more violent sort of relationship to the matter. Martin Luther King, I think he experienced a lot of violence too, but he was trying to be more peaceful about it. And but Malcolm X sort of has a revelation. After he travels to Mecca, he makes the journey to Mecca because he becomes a Muslim in the story. And that's how, in our story, serial, we're going to bring our Muslim religious angle into the story. Because right now, in the 1940s, we were pretty much dealing with the pagan side of the story and the Baptist side of the story and somewhat Catholic side of the story. But when we get into the 1950 sort of era, the Catholic part comes more forefront through the side characters. And the pagan's always there because of Athenata's an angel in the story, angelical character in the story. And then, but she's sort of in limbo in the story, but the whole story of segregation is taking place. So our character, Victoria Amos, she's the character that has to sort of, we experience segregation through her history, her sort of personal, which in the very beginning of the book starts out as an external thing, but at the end of the book becomes a very internal thing, conflict. And if you're involved in any kind of, now myself, my personal history with segregation, I grew up in the 70s and born in 71. And I started school in Montgomery, Alabama, because my dad was stationed in the Air Force. And that's where I started school. And that was in 74, 75, which wasn't that long after passage of the Civil Rights Movement. Civil Rights Act, and where they started integrating the schools. My cohorts group, we were part of that whole thing. And that's when they started busing people to the other side of town. I was part of that group. So we get to experience the whole civil rights movement in this serial through the whole sort of 30-year period of time. And we're going to experience that through this family here. And I thought it would be cool if it was part of Joe West's background, because he ultimately, in the 80s and 90s, he becomes the surrogate parent for Barry Allen. And I thought it would be really cool if he sort of has this huge conflict. And that's sort of why when he meets Barry Allen in the story, he sort of takes Barry Allen under his wing, because he sort of experiences this same sort of experience through his father. His father and him never have a close relationship. Part of the reason is his father has guilt from this incident, and he doesn't know how to I don't say he doesn't know how to relate to his son. He's actually a good father, but his relation between him and Dottie is never resolved. She never trusts him ever again, and for her, without trust and faith, them ever being together was forever destroyed. And that's sort of what we want to show, what happens with this character. How does he, as a character, come back from that? And it's important in the story that we needed but Demetrius to do a really bad thing. But we didn't want to completely destroy his character. We wanted to have him a way to go forward in the story. How does he come back from that? And Dottie actually ultimately forgives him, but she never trusts him ever again. And that trust is what creates the rift between the father and the son in the story. And through the first 14 years of Joe West's life, he never knows this history until he reads Athenada's journal. And he reads the journal by accident. You know, in the story, Athenada knows when her daughter Diana is going to die. She knows the exact date and time and incident by which her daughter is going to die. And she's the only one, other than God, that knows this information. She never writes down when that occurs, because she knows her daughter is very smart and will find some way to figure it out. So she never writes it down. So her daughter is trying to find this information out, and she decides to read the diary. And Joe's there, and when he reads the diary, he reads this whole story, which is why it's written in the way it is. And that's when he realizes what had happened. But prior to that, there's sort of a rift between Joe West and his mother, Dottie. He thinks that his mother is sort of ashamed of her son because she's white and he's black. And he thinks that his mother is not necessarily a racist, but sort of like a stigma. But he realizes it's not true. And it's part of when he reads this story that he realizes that he's been completely wrong. And but that doesn't occur until he's like 14 years old. So we're setting up that story here with his mother, Victoria, and his mother has to let's go ahead and delete that. Be the device by which we get there. I don't know how to bring in his younger sister. I think the only thing we need to do is mention about the sister, but I haven't actually named the character, so we're gonna have to do that. Are we gonna name her? I don't know. Have to think about it. One of the reasons why I'm babbling here is I'm kind of thinking. And for Sebastian, I had not known that he and Dottie had been seeing each other. For a little that I do know of the situation, my son had been going between Vanessa and Dottie. Vanessa had been the girl at home, and Dottie had been the girl on the road. Sebastian had been there to help Demetrius. To be fair, Sebastian has a good heart and a good mind. He's a wiser man than my son. In many ways, he has a better business sense than my son. Demetrius does have a talent at combining things together. He does have musical talent, but he and Dottie lack personal experiences to incorporate that into their musical careers, although Dottie has been growing in that aspect. My son has not. I think I need to write a bridge there. Right then, move this over here. Move this over here. Handy dandy keyboard. Here. Time is it? You got an hour. So what I need to do is that we're going to take a small break. I'll move the chat box back over to our main screen. go. Be right back. I'm gonna go get it. Need to get a drink. I'll be right back. Right, let's get going. think about this conversation. Because my son, where to begin with him? My instincts are to yell at him, but I'm not going to do that. I feel that the violence that had been delivered upon my son already by Red had been sufficient and necessary. Jesus tells me to be gentle and kind, so that is what I had decided to do. As my eyes had laid upon Demetrius's eyes, I had seen a man deeply ashamed of what he had done. Taken him to my office where we could have a private conversation. Two of us had walked into the office. I had gestured to him to take a seat. Poured us both a glass of water. Done. Say by the grace of God. By the grace of God, I need to understand how we all got to this place in time. Son, by the grace of God, I need to understand how we all got to this place in time. Am I at fault here? Had I failed to teach you not behave in such a manner as you had done so tonight? My eyes had begun to swell up with tears. My heart had been shifting in my chest from side. As I'm running the lines in my head, I'm picturing what's the name? Amos. I know him as Amos. Hey, his father, Mason. I know the actor. I hear his voice. I know Sidney Poitier's voice. He has that like very distinct accent. I'm hearing him talking. So he has such a kind voice, and so like you did teach me, Father, but it's I that had failed to listen and to learn. It's all my fault. So, son, by the grace of God, I need to understand how we all got to this place and time. I have fault here. Had I failed to teach you to not behave in such a manner, done so tonight. My eyes had begun to swell up with tears. My heart had been shifting in my chest from side to side. You did teach me, Father, but it is I that had failed to listen and to learn. It is all my fault, Father. Demetrius said. He took a drink of the water from the glass. When I learned about the affair of Dottie and Sebastian, I did not want to believe it. When I had confronted her about it earlier today, she did not shy away. She held her ground with all the faith and courage she could muster. She had told me the truth. My ears had not been ready to hear it. I don't know what had come over me. It had been like a lifetime of anger that had been stored deep inside of me had come to the surface, and I had attacked Dottie. Need another word here. It says, on and on I had went. Sweet. You did teach me, Father, but it is I that had failed to listen and to learn. All my fault, Father, Demetrius had said. Took a drink of water from the glass. When I learned about the affair of Dottie and Sebastian, I did not want to believe it. When I confronted her about it earlier today, she did not shy away. She held her ground with all her faith and courage she could muster, and she told me the truth. My ears had not been ready to hear it. I do not know what had come over me. It had been like a lifetime of anger that had been stored deep inside me had come to the surface. I had attacked Dottie. You could see my body attacking her, and I could not stop myself. He took a drink from the glass. On and on I had went, and I could not stop myself. Never expressed anger like that before. It had been deep, it had been hard. I'm writing the words, but they're not completely working with me, or I'm not really feeling it. So do this. Let's copy it. Select all. Copy it. And save it. And let's hear what it sounds like in our editor. We got a half hour, so we can get some stuff done. Make a few corrections. Come back, work on it tomorrow. It's supposed to rain the next 3 days, so I might not be able to work this. In the event that I can't work this week outside the house, I'm going to use that time to work more on the story. So in that event, we might do a workshop Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, even though we normally don't do those. I think we should. If there's nothing else to do, it just makes sense to use that time to our advantage. Yeah.
4:05 p.m. May 25th, 2019. Mason's Journal. December 9th, 1955. Well, where can I start today? I do not really know. For the most part, my day had been happy and joyful. I should have taken this as a sign from God. The end of today had ended at a very sad place. I can probably state that as a father, it had been the saddest day that I had known up to this moment in my life. Based on what has been revealed to me today, there will be one sadder day in about 20 years or so. But that is all in God's hands now. I had been tending the bar on Friday as I often do. As a person who spent most of his days working down at the concrete plant for a better part of 30 years, serving drinks to people and listening to their stories is a welcome change for me. Anyway, I had been tending the bar when Red had walked into the place. She had always been a quiet person. She had been the person who had given me the money to buy this place and to pay for the construction of the building. It is safe for me to state that without Red, Mason's Tavern would not exist, and I would still be working down at the concrete plant. She had given Victoria the money to go to college and for when she is ready for law school. She had never asked me for anything in return. For me, I know Red to be good people. Red had approached the bar in her quiet and friendly demeanor. I could tell by the look in her eyes that she had been there for something serious. She had said to me, "Mason, I apologize in advance for the damage I am about to do to your place. I am going to place 20 bars of gold here on top of the bar ahead of time. That is $424,000 with 20 bars at 400 ounces at $53 an ounce in 1955. Then, she had turned and had walked over to where my son Demetrius had been sitting with his friend Sebastian. This behavior had concerned me. At the time, I did not know all the details that I do now, but my son, Demetrius had been acting weird for the last several days. Now, for the most part, Demetrius's behavior is joyful. He is a bright and intelligent man when he wants to be. I say this last statement because Demetrius had not been acting in a responsible manner, in my opinion, for some time. Ever since Dottie West had the idea to make him her business manager for her singing career, he had a good streak of fortune. I know that Dottie could have given that job to a more qualified person, but because she is the type of woman who leads with her heart, she extended my son an olive branch. In this day and age, 1955 America, a black man having a job as a music producer and business manager for a white woman in the country music field in Athens, Georgia had not only been unheard of, but it had been illegal to do. But kids are kids and they have dreams of changing the world. I appreciate the fact that Dottie had extended this offer to my son. Since they had grown up together on Dottie's cotton farm and had spent most of their childhood together, it would make sense to me that she gave him an opportunity that had been aligned with his dreams. However, Demetrius had taken advantage of Dottie West and Vanessa Montenegro. Now, I do not want to suggest that he had set out to take advantage of the two women. I feel that he took advantage of the moment because he had been a young immature man. He had these two women that he loved and could not be in an open relationship with one because of the law, but she had been the gravy train. And, not knowing where they would end up, probably contributed to the mess that had become of their relationship. I am not saying that it had been right or had been wrong, I am just stating my observations as I had known them at the time. Young people can find themselves in strange situations. Heck, old people still get in those situations. I had just wanted to state for the record that Demetrius is not entirely at fault here. Sure, what he had done to Dottie West should have never happened. I had not raised my son to behave that way. It saddens me to no end to have witnessed such cruelty from the man I had raised. His mother Victoria had been wounded deeply by what she had witnessed. Victoria had to demonstrate a lot of restraint at the beatdown that had occurred by Red to her son. No parent wants to see any level of cruelty inflicted on their children. Red too had seemed conflicted. She had cared about the children. I write children, but all four of them are adults now. Red had seemed genuinely sad at the altercation. As the father of Demetrius, I had been deeply hurt by witnessing such an event. However, I do understand why it had to occur. A wrong had been done to Dottie West. And, my son had made the mistake of upsetting the quiet red-headed friend of Dottie West. As much as the struggle to end segregation in the United States is a cause I will champion until the end, the women in our country have an even greater road to travel. I had known when Red had placed those 20 bars of gold upon the bar tonight, she was going to do some bodily harm to someone. I had not known it would be Demetrius, but I did know that for Red, this had become personal. As I had stated before, I had known Red to be good people. For me, that is not just cute talk for the moment. I had witnessed her do some remarkable things in the community. I have seen her heal people that would otherwise be dead. I have seen her find people that had been long lost. What she did for little Ruby Tuesday had touched my heart so deeply. What many do not know about Red is that she walks everywhere. I do not know why she walks everywhere. I only know that she does it. With as much money as she has, she could easily buy herself a car, but she has not done so, and I respect that. I do know that she spends her nights working at Dottie's West Aunt's place, one of the local cat houses in town. And, I do know that she spends her morning working on Gus's farm, and afternoon working at Dottie's boutique. And, she is always around her daughter, Diana. In just the 5 short years that Red has lived in our small town of Athens, Georgia, she had become well known to many men and many women at her nighttime job. Now, I write this last part to give context to how much I love Red. It is not an attempt to discredit her or to stand in judgment of her. I get the sense that Red working down at Evelini's place had more to do with helping out the family and not for the money. And heck, Red is an attractive woman. Oh, I have looked. I do notice that she is not aging like other women at her age are doing. She has been in our small town for 5 years and women who were younger than her now look older to her. I have witnessed her pass through the local hospitals every morning on her walks and heal people up who have been cast aside as terminal illness. I know that she works with Father Michaels on the weekends as he does his Sunday morning rituals. She just stands quietly by as the people accept their wafer and heals them up. When she had healed my son up on the dance floor after she had beat him down, I had been astonished. I had never known someone in my life that would heal up or help the person that had done them wrong like that. She could have left him there to die, but she did not. Heck, she had tipped the band. Then, when she had revealed that Demetrius had gotten Dottie West pregnant, that had shocked me. For a long moment, I could not find the words to speak. I had held my wife in my arms to comfort her. Truthfully, I do not even know what my thoughts ought to be for this particular situation. On one hand, I have to love my son. We are a family. However, I cannot simply look the other way. With a grandson on the way, Dottie West is now family too. We are connected and we will always be connected. And Gus, that man has always been there for my family. He had allowed Victoria and Rick Sanders to use his farm to host the political rallies for segregation for free every year, even after the first one that ended in a riot. He had given Demetrius, Vanessa, and Sebastian a job with fair wages while they had been teenagers. His brother Paul had been the contractor that had built Mason's Tavern when no other contractor in town would take the job. It saddens me to no end when I see the pain in Gus's eyes. It downright angers me. With each flash of pain that wounds my heart, I just held my wife to anchor myself from doing something I would regret. My thoughts had gone to Vanessa. She had cared for Demetrius for a long time. Ever since they had been teenagers. For her, she had always had a childhood crush on Demetrius. And he had always known it. He had taken advantage of that love many times. Had he gone too far? I do not know. I only know that my son has what some people term as angel eyes. He likes to smooth the girls over with his soft demeanor and soft caring voice to woo them into liking him. I do not know where he inherited that from, more than likely his mother. It certainly did not come from me. Heck, I cannot even woo myself into doing stuff, let alone other people. My thoughts on Sebastian. I do not know where to start. Sebastian and Demetrius had always been friends. Sebastian and Vanessa are brother and sister. They had all grown up with Dottie West since they were in kindergarten. I am not surprised that Demetrius and Sebastian developed feelings for Dottie. She is a very attractive woman. And, she has genuine musical talent. When she sings at our place, the place packs in with customers and people all get very quiet for her. Dottie has a lot of love in her heart. It is infectious. For Sebastian, I had not known that he and Dottie had been seeing each other. From what little that I do know of the situation, my son had been going between Vanessa and Dottie. Vanessa had been the girl at home, and Dottie had been the girl on the road. Sebastian had been there to help Demetrius. To be fair, Sebastian has a good heart and a good mind. He is a wiser man than my son. In many ways, he has a better business sense than my son, but Demetrius does have a talent at combining things together. He does have musical talent, but he and Dottie lack personal experiences to incorporate that into their musical careers. Although, Dottie has been growing in that aspect, and my son has not. My son, where to begin with him? My instincts are to yell at him, but I am not going to do that. I feel that the violence that had been delivered upon my son already by Red had been sufficient and necessary. Jesus tells me to be gentle and kind. So that is what I had decided to do. As my eyes had laid upon Demetrius's eyes, I had seen a man deeply ashamed of what he had done. I had taken him to my office where we could have a private conversation. As the two of us had walked into the office, I had gestured to him to take a seat. I had poured us both a glass of water. Son, by the grace of God, I need to understand. I had poured us both a glass of water. Son, by the grace of God, I need to understand how we all got to this place and time. Am I at fault here? Had I failed to teach you to not behave in such a manner as you had done so tonight? My eyes had begun to swell up with tears. My heart had been shifting in my chest from side to side. You did teach me, Father, but it is I that had failed to listen and to learn. It is all my fault, Father. Demetrius had said. He took a drink of water from the glass. When I had learned about the affair of Dottie and Sebastian, When I had learned about the affair of Dottie and Sebastian, I did not want to believe it. When I had confronted her about it earlier today, she did not shy away. She held her ground with all the faith and courage she could muster, and she had told me the truth. My ears had not been ready to hear it. I do not know what had come over me. It had been like a lifetime of anger that had been stored deep inside of me had come to the surface, and I had attacked Dottie. I could see my body attacking her, and I could not stop myself. He took a drink from the glass. On and on I had went, and I could not stop myself. He took a drink from the glass. On and on I had gone, and I could not stop myself. I had never expressed anger like that before. It had been deep, and I had been hard. I had never known the pain that deep before. She had hurt me in a way that went deep. He took it. On and on I had gone, and I could not stop myself. I had never expressed anger like that before. It had been deep, and it had been hard. I had never known the pain that deep before. She had hurt me in a way that went deep. He took a drink from the glass. I do not say this in anger or that I had been right and she had been wrong. I am only saying how I felt. I had believed in Dottie. I did not think she had been capable of such a thing. When she held her ground the way she had done, I had snapped.
Alright, that's not that bad. Let's go ahead and save this. Copy. Here. Select all. Paste. Save. And I end all this right here. Go ahead and end the show here. Let's move this back. It's going to go straight to the intermission and regroup. Go ahead and shut that out. Just back up tomorrow. There we go. Right. Go ahead and bring up the screen. There'll be a 30-second delay, then we'll come back and we'll be in the intermission, and we'll be back with the grind at 1800 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, which was an hour from now. And until then, see you soon.